Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to make a video basically showing you how to set up the Hyperspin front end on the NVIDIA Shield. Um, if you're looking to get a lot of the systems with a lot of the newer systems with the ROMs, like the CD-based stuff, you're going to need a good amount of space. You can use an external drive with the NVIDIA Shield. That's what I'm using. I have an enclosure with a 1 TB drive, and as you'll see here, it's close to being full. Um, and that's honestly not even close to what you can get. I mean, typically you can get yourself a 2 TB, up to a 4, just to be safe. As far as Dreamcast, PlayStation, PS2, stuff like that. I mean, those they just require a lot of space. Um, so what we're gonna do is when we want to download the system, we're gonna go to hyperspin-fe.com, and you're just gonna click on the downloads, and it will take you to this page here. Next, you're gonna go to Hyperspin, and you can get the Hyperspin 1.3.3 full install. Actually, if you can probably, well, this is in beta, so I would just go with the full install for now. And then also you're gonna need one more thing. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna open up Hyperspin Android, and you're gonna download the settings here. Okay, and you can see I've downloaded both of these. Well, that's something different. That's the starter pack here, but the Android settings. And basically what it's going to look like is this here. So when you download Hyperspin, you're basically going to have this folder here. And you want to put this at the base of the hard drive directory. And all we're going to do with these files here, and you're going to need obviously something like WinZip or 7Z. We're going to open up Hyperspin. You're going to go to Settings, and you're basically going to take these files and move them in here and overwrite the ones that are in here. Because as you can see, well, I'll just show you. So what this does is it sets it up for the Android-based system. As you can see here, the executable, it's loading up Retroarch. Retroarch is kind of like an all-in-one emulator, and basically it does most of the emulator or the systems that you're going to want to play. There are a couple that it does not support or it does not do as of now. There are some that are still kind of glitchy. The Atari Jaguar, for instance, is a little bit glitchy. The Gamecube emulator, you actually have to use Dolphin emulator, and that can be gotten from the Android store on your Shield or whatever Android device you're using. But for me, it's the Shield. So what you're going to do is, I mean, you're going to see these here. This is what you're going to open up to when you open up the files, because you're going to want to go to the settings folder anyways, and this is where you're going to set up where your ROMs are at. Because by default, what they tell you, and this is kind of how I did it as well, is so you just basically you're going to have an emulators folder, and with Hyperspin Android, you don't need any emulators installed on the or even placed on the hard drive, because you're not going to use them. Even this, I don't even need that, but it's just there because I was testing out certain files. But if you go in here, let's say PlayStation, and what you're going to do is just make a folder called ROMs. And then at that point, you can see here, you'll have your files inside there. And we'll get into the naming factor in a bit, but it's the same with the entertainment system here. You'll have all the files. Just what I do, keep it base, keep it simple. The name of the system, a folder that's named ROMs, and then the files inside there. And the naming is important, and I will get into that. But so what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to your settings here, and like I said, a lot of them will be set as far as the emulator goes, like Retroarch. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna basically tell it, because this is gonna be at the base of the Hyperspin folder. And then you got your Nintendo Entertainment System, and then you got ROMs. So that's telling it exactly where those ROMs are at for that particular system. Use ROM path, true, because this here is for your PC based system. So we don't have to worry about that. And by default, like I said, for the Android system or settings, it put this in here already as far as the cores for RetroArch. So we don't even have to mess with that. And then all you're going to do is, I noticed a lot of them say zip, and Android doesn't actually support zip. So for the Rom extension, you're going to look at the extension on your ROM. So for instance, Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, we'll just call it, that's easier that way. NES is actually the tag at the end of the ROMs. So you have to tell it which one you want to look for. If you don't have that in here, it isn't going to work. So we'll just do NES. Like all this stuff here doesn't matter. We don't need any of that stuff. That's not for Android. Don't delete it, obviously, because if you wanted to go and use this for PC version, you're going to need that stuff. So don't delete it. But just know that you don't need it. And like I said, by default, this is here. NES, we got RetroArch, and then your ROM pad. And that's it. And then all we have to do is just click save once you type this in to tell it where your ROMs are at, and then we're just going to close it out. It pretty much goes the same way for most of these. There are some of them where, let's say for this one here, so we got, because obviously some of the ROMs might be in different formats than other ones, as far as for the same system. So you might have an ISO, or you might have a bin-Q combination. So for the 3DO, we go ISO and then comma Q. That way it looks for both. And then here again, like I said, this is the simplest way to do it. It's just emulators, the system name, ROMs, easy. Again, make sure that this says true, and you're gonna use that for all, pretty much all of them at this point. And then you just save it. I mean that's it. So now with the CD-based systems, you're gonna need what's called a BIOS file. It will not run without it. And what you can do is you can actually get a full listing of what BIOS files you're gonna need for the systems. So these ones here are for the 3DO. And if you don't have those, the games won't work. I mean, you'll basically load up in RetroArch to a black screen. So what you can do is just do a search online, BIOS files for, Hyperspin, whatnot, or not Hyperspin, but that particular emulator. So like PlayStation, or like this one here is for the TurboGrafx CD. So if you wanted to get that one going, you would just download this file. And what you're going to do is you're going to actually go into RetroArch in the settings and basically direct it where you're going to have those BIOS files at. Tell RetroArch where that's at. That way, it looks for it, and then you'll have no problem loading up your ROMs. Let's see. So a couple sites here. As you see, Hyperspin-FE. I mean, this is they do have basically like a membership that you can essentially purchase for about $40 or something along the lines of that. But what it does is it gives you access to the FTP. And if you don't know what that is, it's file transfer system basically. You can use like FileZilla, something of that matter, and download stuff in bulk because they do have a lot of stuff available for different systems. So as you can see here, for instance, you have the Sony PlayStation official database as far as well, for the PlayStation. So if we go to let's see, we'll go to Hyperspin Media here, and you can see there's a ton of files. But the FTP is going to allow you to download them a hell of a lot faster. So the PlayStation official wheel pack. So if we go into here and we go to download, it's going to download a zip file full of the wheel art. And what that is you go to Hyperspin and you're going to go to Media and the system that you're downloading for, which is PlayStation, and you can see these here. So images, and then you got your wheel. So all these wheel arts, because by default with Hyperspin, it basically puts just letters or just text in when you're going through the wheel. And you'll know what I'm talking about with the wheel as far as in my other video I kind of showed an intro to Hyperspin. But in that wheel art, you'll just see text, the name. So any ROM that you have, that wheel art will show up. And these are all named correctly by default. You don't have to worry about the naming, anything like that. And they just have, I mean, it's so customizable. There's people that make so many custom versions. You have front end themes and stuff like that. You can see here. So let's go to console systems. And all this stuff is free to download. There's nothing that you have to purchase. There's no limit. So if I go to, let's say, TurboGrafx 16. Okay, so here we go here. This is the one I'm actually using. And you can see that they have the widescreen versions of the main menu theme, and they have just the 4:3. If you're doing like an arcade version, and you're not using a widescreen TV or something of that effect. Like I said, for each individual system, you can download the pointer. The pointer is basically like an arrow on the wheel to point to the different games and whatnot. So all I would do if I wanted to download this, you click on that, and you're going to download it, and then it's basically going to go into, well, we need to go back to the other system. So we're going to go to TurboGrafx 16, images, and pointer. Where's it at? There it is, in other. So sometimes when you download these, they're not named right. All you have to do is change the name to pointer. That's it. And then when you load it up, it'll work. So you kind of get the gist of it. It's kind of the same as far as, because they do have game themes also. So you can do game themes, which on this one they only have one. But so when you go to that wheel, let's go to this one because obviously this is going to be one of the more popular ones. If you now you can go to game themes here, you can see there's 112 different themes just for specific games. And obviously, like I said, with the FTP, make it a hell of a lot quicker. And as you can see here, so what you would do is as you're going through the wheel, you would see as you get to the Addams Family game, you'll see this theme pop up. And again, with the videos, you'll have to download those too. And I'll show you that in a second, but it'll play the game, like snippets of the game as well. And that site is here. It's emuvideo or movies.com. Again, this one you can get a membership for as well. So you can download from the FTP, which is just a hell of a lot quicker. artwork packs, music packs, video packs. They have a lot of stuff on the FTP. So this is another great site that, just like the Hyperspin site, that you definitely want to check out. So that's about it as far as those. Like I said, you can just look through this stuff, and the forum is really, really helpful. Everybody's really nice. Just ask your question. No one, obviously look around before you start asking, because a lot of people have probably asked the same question as you. And you find that you ask it like, hey, someone's asked this 3 times already, so just go check out theirs. Now, for the renaming, like I was talking about before, and you can find this tool in the Hyperspin website. It's Don's Hyperspin Tools. What this is for a lot of the systems, when you download the ROMs, they have to be named specific to what the database says they're named as. So if I go to Hyperspin database and I look up entertainment system, and we're going to go to here, as you can see, the files here. So this name has to be exactly the same as this one, whatever. It has to be exactly the same. If it's not the same, it won't see the ROM and you won't be able to play it. So what will happen is when you download a file, and I'll actually show you one that I'm working on currently. If we go to emulators and PlayStation and ROMs, we're going to scroll down here. For instance, let's see, right here. So I have these files here. So Final Doom, and when I open them, you can see that's how they're named there. But that will not work. So what they would have to be changed to is most likely just at the end and say USA in brackets. But that's what the database is for. But with Don's rename tool, it kind of does the process for it. Not for that one, because those are in zip files, but the ones that are just the files that are just named improperly. And I'll actually show you an example of that. So if we open up the ROM renamer, we're going to tell it where the database file is for that specific system. So you're just going to go to database folders, pick whatever system you want, and we're just going to do the NES. And we're going to go to Nintendo Entertainment System and open. And you're going to tell it where the ROM folder is. So computer, your drive, what am I doing here? Hyperspin, emulators, NES, and ROMs. Click OK, and obviously most times it's going to go right back in the same folder, so we'll just paste that there, and we're going to click scan. So what this tool does is it scans it and shows how it should be, and it'll tell you what's missing. As you can see here, there's one missing. Most likely either it's named wrong or it's not. I don't have it. But what this will do is if it sees those files, you can go click rename, and it'll just rename, and you can see they're matched, missing, or files scanned. It'll rename them based on that database telling what it should be. So like if you downloaded Excite Bike, in parentheses it just says US or something like that. It might see it, but it's like, okay, well, we need to rename that to make sure that it's right. Let's see. There it is right there. So Japan, comma, US is the correct spelling of it. And it would rename it to that automatically. And you can do all these other options also, just to kind of see what you're missing, basically. Then you just click rename and it automatically does it. Now the ones that aren't found, you would have to just go in, check your database, kind of go one by one. That's kind of what I'm doing with the PlayStation at this point. But as you saw, they released the official database for PlayStation, which is pretty damn awesome. So will make that easier. Let's see. So, uh, like I said, that's pretty much the basics on the renamer. They got the list generator, stuff like that. I don't really use any of that stuff, but BIOS files, like I said, make sure any CD-based games, you gotta have them. And basically they have to be named because when you download them, sometimes they're not named correctly. They're named something different for whatever reason, and you have to be the name of it changed to exactly what it should be, and then it's fine and it works. Hyperspin, again, you don't use any of this stuff. Not scripts. Rocket Launcher, you don't use. Media, obviously. Hyperspin theme, nope. Cloud, nope. And these two. I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'll have some information in the description so you can have a better idea of where to find this stuff. It is pretty simple. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. And I appreciate you all watching, and I hope this helped a little bit. Like I said, I'm by no means an expert, but I do know a good amount about it at this point, just from the time that I've put into it. So, like I said, I'm glad to help. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.